So, one of the first things that I teach around self love is a very, very practical thing you can do basically right now. It's about picking a thing that brings you joy, and the threshold of doing that thing right now is so low that you can actually do that. And the thing that brings you joy can be as small as taking yourself for a walk because you get fresh air and you get to be by yourself for a moment and you get to listen to a book while you walk or whatever, because it's a moment to yourself that you really, really missed and longed for and needed. And you finally give yourself the chance to do that. And that brings you joy. And I myself started way back when I was feeling sort of depressed after like having my heart broken again, and living in this tiny apartment at the time that I was living in, wanting to work for Oprah, but living in Finland and doing shitty TV reality shows instead, but actually being unemployed at the time and not having like work and money and anything. And I was feeling so depressed at that time. But the one thing I started doing for myself when I got over that worst worst slump was that I started lighting myself these small tea light candles. I started lighting those for myself like every evening. And the way that started out was that I had these small, like these candle holders. I still have them. I love them. Um, so I was watching those in my tiny apartment one evening. I was sitting on a sofa and I was watching those small candle holders, tea light holders, and they were empty and there was no light in them. And I was like, oh, being miserable, not having anyone to light those candles for. And then I realized, like, wait a minute, I actually do have someone, and that someone is me. And that's when I started lighting those candles for myself every evening, even though I was depressed and my life was not looking the way I wanted it to look or mostly feel. And sometimes the resistance to light the candles was really, really huge. And at some nights, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And I became aware how there was this sort of stuck feeling inside me, resisting and saying, not necessarily speaking in words, but saying that I was somehow unworthy of doing that. And I wasn't, because my life was so shitty and and I somehow wasn't worth it. So I couldn't light the candles, even though it was just such a small act of just lighting a match and lighting the candles for myself. But that would have meant that I was worthy of this small act of kindness towards myself and small act of care. So this is where I started back in the day, way back when. And when I kept going with lighting the candles, I started doing a little bigger things of care and nurturing towards myself. And I realized that actually when I do those things, my feeling about myself got way better. Like I started feeling much better about myself, and started feeling more empowered, and the depression sort of lifted, and life moved along. And I realized that a huge part of how I was feeling about myself and my self worth came down to those small things that I could do for myself. And as I could do those small things, I could do bigger things. And that's actually ultimately what changed my life, because I had been struggling with the notion and concept of self love and self acceptance and all that, like how to allow abundance and how to da da da, whatever. And I struggled with that. But then I really realized it came down to these really, really small steps. And then all of that led to the life that I'm leading now, which is way, way different from how things used to be for me. And maybe I'll tell about that in another video. But this is really about how to start acting more kind towards yourself, because self-love really is a lot about action. It's not about necessarily the right kind of thoughts or getting the psychological stuff right or spiritual stuff right and fixing yourself. And it's not about that. It's about what what is the smallest kind act that you can do for yourself right now, today. And also without the expectation that you should somehow now feel very loving towards yourself or feel better or feel more joy or whatever. Don't expect to feel anything different. Just do this act of kindness towards yourself without expectation. And we have so many layers of those subconscious demands towards ourselves, and these feelings of shame and unworthiness and blocks and all those things in our subconscious. And this is the first and most efficient way to start counteracting those. Because as you remember, I used to have that huge resistance sometimes to match the light and light the candles. And that's when all my subconscious shit hit the fan. And Mm, that always happens when we start acting more kind towards ourselves, take more care of ourselves, when we learn these skills of self love. We're always going to be hit with those layers of resistance and stuck emotions and beliefs. And the key in those moments is to keep going, light the candles the next day, go for a walk the next day, just keep going. And your system gets the message that um, it's safe to release those old beliefs of unworthiness and unsafety and all those blocks. And they will be released as you keep going on your journey of self-love and self-care. But this is the one of the first things of self-care that you can start doing right now, today, that you think of something. And often I suggest my clients to make a little list of things that bring them joy, like even really small things, bigger things too, but small things that bring them joy and make them feel cared for. And then make an inventory of how often in your life you actually do those things. And that's always completely related to how you feel about yourself. So if your inventory shows that you don't do these things that often, no wonder that you're feeling like shit about yourself. So you don't really need to fix yourself or get the right stuff psychologically or spiritually before you can start feeling better about yourself. It's really about um, acts of kindness toward yourself, acts of care towards your own self. And the more you start doing, incorporating this to your daily life, the better you're going to start feeling. And I don't mean in a sense of um, absence of difficult feelings and emotions, but I mean that you're gonna feel more agency in your life when you start taking care of yourself in this way. I actually recently got a question on my Finnish online course around it's an online course about relationship, conscious relationships. And someone was asking why it's so difficult to feel caring towards yourself. She's been very critical and demanding and striving for things all her life, and especially critical towards her own self. And she was having a hard time starting doing these small acts of care. And my answer, my reply to her was that don't even expect yourself to feel super nourishing or motherly or anything like that towards yourself in the beginning. Just start doing these things without expectation on how you should feel or that you should somehow be instantly relieved from your anxieties or whatever. Do these things to support yourself in whatever you're experiencing in this moment with yourself and with life. Um, do these acts of kindness in good days, good times, and bad times too. And you're especially going to need them in the bad times, because when you don't take care of yourself, when the shit hits the fan or you're experiencing something difficult, that's same as abandoning yourself. So mm, what is meant by not abandoning yourself anymore in the midst of life and whatever you're experiencing is exactly this: that you do things to take care of yourself, not the things that you learn on Instagram or whatever, like how many liters of water you should drink a day per day, or how much green juice you should drink, or whatever. Um, do do these things intuitively, like according to whatever calls you today, and not necessarily by what you should do for your own well-being. So there's also a huge difference. If taking care of yourself today is like um, laying on the sofa under the blanket and eating chocolate and reading a book, do that if that works for you today. And tomorrow, if it is going for a run and taking a bath afterwards, do that. And soon, when you commit to this, soon you'll start noticing a difference in your how you feel about yourself and your life. Actually, I haven't met anyone, and I've met by now I met thousands of clients and attendees on my courses, um, that if you commit to this, it will change your life. It will start changing your life. These small little steps, acts of kindness, acts of care towards yourself. And this is the practical beginning of what self love is all about.